one-liners, who's putting in the long hours, who's just going to wing it. I want to bring in Jeffrey Lord, CNN political commentator and former Reagan White House political director, and Mitch Stewart, who's the former Battleground States director for President Obama's 2012 campaign. He was Iowa State Caucus director for the 2008 Obama campaign as well. Jeffrey, I want to start with you, with your background in Reagan's administration. And take me back to that time, too, because he was an entertainer, too. Reagan was famous. He was a star, very much like Donald Trump is. How much debate prep do you think Donald Trump might be doing compared to what Ronald Reagan was doing as we head to the Ronald Reagan Library tomorrow?
Well, here's this debate story about Ronald Reagan. It was in 1984. He had two debates with Walter Mondale. And the first one, he prepped like crazy, and they threw all sorts of statistics at him, and your administration did this, that, and the other thing. And he had a terrible debate performance. So that the media was asking the question, is he too old to be president? So as the next one came along, and I believe it was Roger Ailes who advised him of this, Mrs. Reagan was furious, as I remember the tale. Don't do this. Don't, just go be yourself, stick to your principles, stick to your message. That's what he did, and Reagan himself came up with a line so that when the question was asked about his age, he said, well, I won't make my opponent's youth and inexperience an issue in the campaign.
I love that. And
the camera caught Walter Mondale bursting into laughter. The debate was done right then and there.
Yeah, it was magic. So it was a magical moment. One of the best moments in
right.
debate history. Yeah. You know, to that point,
exactly.
though, we still saw Sarah Palin being drilled blue card after blue card in preparation for her debate because there was this theory that she needed more voting up on foreign policy. So with that in mind, Mitch, you went back to the Obama days. Guy was real bright. He'd been in the Senate. Did you have to do a lot of debate prep with him? And do you think anyone's taking that same advice to just go easy? Don't study too hard. Just be you.
Well, the one thing I will say, Ashley, is that Sarah Palin needed the help on foreign policy, as evident by some of the responses she had, one being that she saw Russia from her front porch. I think, you know, with the president's debate prep, he did a couple things, or the campaign did a couple things to put him in a comfortable place. And so we would go to a remote location. At one point, we went to Colorado. I think we went outside Las Vegas at one point, so that he can really seclude himself, really focus in on the debate prep, work with his advisors. We would try to, from a campaign perspective, maybe do one or two events, but very, very light lifting from his perspective so that he could really focus. And, you know, in the lead up to the first debate in 2012, that approach was not as successful as we had hoped. But I think you did see a turnaround debates 2 and 3. And so I suspect that on the Republican side, these candidates are going to look at what worked in debate 1 and what did not work and apply those lessons to tomorrow night.
Jeffrey, do you think that Carly Fiorina right now is looking at Donald Trump's business record? Because she now is going to be head-to-head with him. There's a lot of fireworks expected that potentially could come off between the two of them. And we know already that Donald's big line is that she failed as the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. So is she going to go after him and really dig deep on his background? Because he's got some bugaboos there, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is out there. So the question would be, what is it that she's going to say that would be new? He's talked about the Hewlett-Packard thing. Maybe he will again, and maybe she will. Maybe she'll talk about, for instance, the bankruptcies. He gave a very solid explanation of this. A lot of people don't understand bankruptcy law. These were different companies out of 100 companies, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe she'll go into that kind of thing. But, you know, she's got to get her own agenda across. This just can't be Trump prep. It's got to be debate prep and her game, and what would she do if she were president, not just stand there and take punches. And for that matter, all of the other candidates have got to figure that out. You know, they've got to be themselves.
Yeah, you know, when you say that they got to be themselves, last night we saw Donald Trump at the American Airlines Arena in Dallas with just lines and lines of people who effectively almost sounded like they had come to see a show. It is one thing to have a lot of people come with autographs and signs and you know, funny little, you know, homemade posters and almost like stuffed toys. It's another thing to harness that excitement and actually turn them into real voters. Because just because they go to the show doesn't mean they go to the polls. And Mitch, you knew that well. You guys did that almost with an exact science. Explain what this guy needs to do if he wants to turn all these excited, enthusiastic people into real voters.
And I wouldn't necessarily show, Ashley. I'd call it a circus, and everybody loves a circus. And so the crowds that you're seeing right now at Trump's events do provide him and his campaign an opportunity that I don't think he's taking advantage of. And for us on the Obama campaign, we looked at every single opportunity for us to establish a relationship with a prospective voter. And that voter then can turn into a volunteer, and that volunteer can then turn into a donor. And so we looked at his events, both online and offline, as opportunities to start building a relationship. And as you said, we were very exact about how we did that. Every time that we had a public event, we were meticulous about getting all the data we could on the individuals who came so we could follow up with them. Not only would we, so for tomorrow night, there's going to be 500 people in the actual debate arena, and there's going to be millions that watch it on CNN. But from a campaign perspective, we would organize thousands of house parties across the country to watch this debate, talk about the issues, and then we would say, listen, here are a list of voters in your neighborhood. You should go out and start engaging them. And so we look for every single opportunity to start building relationships with the American public.
And turn the
tomorrow night will be a great
enthusiasm
example.
into an actual ballot marking, because again, it's one thing to go to a show and it's another thing to go out on election day.
No, that's
guys,
exactly
I think he's pretty.
Yeah, I have to leave it there, unfortunately, Jeffrey, but I do have a bunch more questions, and I know I'm going to have you back because we've got a lot more to come as we look forward to tomorrow night. Jeffrey Lord, Mitch Stewart, thank you so much.
Thank you.